Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The Snow Lady danced in the icy skies. The Snow Empress was a unique being. She was a living being formed by the purest ice-type origin energy of heaven and earth within the extreme north's core region, and after countless years of gestation and growth, had finally developed her own thoughts and intelligence. She finally became an intelligent creature. Her original form was composed of the purest elements. If the manifold mysterious ice essence was a treasure, then she was the extreme north's daughter. The Ice Sky Snow Lady, blessed and unique, the Snow Empress, dancing as snowflakes drifted in the air. Huo Yuhao could clearly feel that he was slowly experiencing moments of enlightenment from this incredibly beautiful dance. But even he wasn't clear what he was being enlightened about. Perhaps this was one of his most peculiar experiences. The Ice Empress stood beside Huo Yuhao, and her eyes were completely intoxicated. She was also immersed in the Snow Empress dance. The Snow Empress had always been a fairy of the snow. The Snow Empress dance continued for an hour or so before she finally descended from the sky and returned to Huo Yuhao's side. Her expression seemed very calm, and not as intoxicated as the Ice Empress was, but Huo Yuhao could tell from her emotions that she was feeling deeply happy. Yes. They are home, and they should be happy. Right at this moment, Huo Yuhao suddenly felt a large mass of life energy emerge from beyond the horizon. This wave traveled in their direction very quickly. Huo Yuhao unleashed spiritual detection and directed it into the distance. That is, Huo Yuhao's pupils instantly contracted, and a fearful look appeared in his eyes. The extreme north's core region was still a world of ice and snow that stretched to the end of the horizon, and not a single trace of life could be seen. However, Huo Yuhao could see within the range of his spiritual detection that there were thousands and thousands of soul beasts that were gathering in his direction. These soul beasts took many different forms. There were flying soul beasts that were rarely seen in the extreme north, while more of them were on the ground. The extreme northern bears that Huo Yuhao had seen before were here, and there were many other species that he had never seen before. Every soul beast seemed very excited, and they were running in his direction as quickly as they could. This was but the second time that Huo Yuhao had seen such a spectacular gathering of soul beasts. The last time this had happened was when the Great Star Do Forest had launched a beast wave against Shrek City. There weren't as many soul beasts as there were compared to back then, but this was almost a miracle, considering that the extreme north's core region was almost uninhabited. Huo Yuhao quickly calmed down after a very momentary shock. Perhaps only the Snow Empress can create a scene as spectacular as this in the extreme north. Even the Ice Empress isn't as good as she is in this respect. The Snow Empress was number 3 in the 10 great savage beasts, and she was the extreme north's true dictator. She was a formidable soul beast with 700,000 years of cultivation. Of the 10 great savage beasts, only the top 3 controlled a particular region. The beast god, Di Qian, controlled the core of the continent, the Great Star Do Forest. The Evil Eye Tyrant King ruled over the Evil Demon Forest, where there were the most soul beasts within the Sun Moon Empire. However, the Snow Empress' reach was the widest. In the icy plains of the extreme north that stretched to the end of the world, every single soul beast bowed to her command. She was queen in this place, and she was also the dictator. The beast god, or the Evil Eye Tyrant King, had never come to this place to challenge the Snow Empress' authority. This was because not even the beast god was confident of defeating the Snow Empress in an environment like the extreme north. Furthermore, no other place inhabited by soul beasts was as cohesive as the extreme north. Huo Yuhao had merged with the Snow Empress by chance and coincidence back then, and she became his spirit. The Snow Empress almost made his body explode, because she had too much power on her own, and the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux had to burn the remnants of his divine sense, so that Huo Yuhao could complete the Equality Pact in the end. The Snow Empress became the Snow Lady afterwards. In the beginning, she was like Huo Yuhao's daughter, and her cute demeanor made everyone express tender affection for her. The Snow Lady gradually grew up, but she was always by Huo Yuhao's side. She was always helping him, accompanying him, and supporting him. In Huo Yuhao's heart, the the Snow Lady had already become family. Her status in his heart could almost compare to Donga. However, the Snow Empress had recovered her memory not too long ago due to the manifold mysterious ice essence. Huo Yuhao felt bewildered and helpless. He wasn't afraid of anything else, but that the Snow Empress would leave him. The Snow Lady had become the Snow Empress, and he could feel that they were less intimate, and there was more reverence. That reverence in his heart had reached the highest possible level at this moment. He finally understood that the little Snow Lady that had once treated him like a father was the dictator of the extreme north, and she ruled over thousands and thousands of soul beasts. The Snow Empress, she's the Snow Empress after all. A faint sadness gradually appeared at the bottom of Huo Yuhao's eyes, and he subconsciously took a step back. His expression was very calm, but there was a dash of sorrow deep in his heart. If it were possible, he truly hoped that the Snow Empress was still the Snow Lady. He even hoped that she would remain as the tiny Snow Lady that had formed a pact with him in the beginning. The Snow Empress just stood there silently and gazed into the distance as the corner of her mouth curved into a gorgeous smile. The immense pack of soul beasts came ever closer in the distance. The Ice Empress' eyes also grew excited. Yes, they were back, and they were back in the world where they reigned supreme. Thousands of soul beasts thundering across the extreme north's icy plains, what a rare sight. The enormous beast wave was congregating in Huo Yuhao's direction very quickly, and they stopped only when they were 1,000 meters away from the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress. All the soul beasts in the extreme north slowly lay prostrate on the ground after they reached this place, and they faced the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress with the most respectful and worshipful attitudes. The soul beasts in the distance gradually formed a circle that was 2,000 meters in diameter. This circle's thickness gradually increased as the number of soul beasts grew. Most of the extreme north's soul beasts were white. If one didn't look closely, one would think that they were just snow piled up on tiny hills. Some soul beasts that were relatively larger in size were particularly eye-catching. The Snow Empress stood there quietly as the expression on her beautiful face grew cold. She was just standing there, proud and aloof, and there was no other soul beast that dared to stand as proudly as she did. They were in worship, they were worshipping their ruler. The Snow Empress had been gone for far too long. But even so, nobody in the extreme north dared to forget her aura. She was the one who protected their paradise, and her existence made every soul beast in the extreme north bow to her command. Not a single powerful soul beast dared to resist her rule. The extreme north had had very few conflicts ever since the Snow Empress took over as ruler. Nobody dared to challenge or violate her authority. Every single soul beast knew that the Snow Empress was the Ice Sky Snow Lady, who was the spirit of the snow. She could sense everything where there was snow and ice. In the beginning, they were afraid of the Snow Empress, but this fear slowly became reverence. The most ferocious and dominant soul beasts in the extreme north eventually lost their lives to the Snow Empress' 3 ultimate techniques. There were no longer any voices of resistance since then. The only person who could decide everything and dictate everything was the Ice Sky Snow Lady's ice-cold voice. More and more soul beasts gathered at the outer layer. However, the icy plains were still extremely quiet, and one had to listen very closely to hear the soul beasts breathing. They were panting with excitement for many of these soul beasts. To be able to see the Snow Empress in person was their life's greatest honor. The bears from before had also returned. However, they were just lying prostrate on the outer layer. They weren't even worthy of entering the inner circle. There was a bear that was exceptionally large that returned with them. This bear's tremendous body was like a tiny hill as it walked over, and even though it was traveling on all fours, it was still more than 15 meters tall. Thick fur covered its immense frame, and it radiated faint silver hues. When this enormous bear appeared, the soul beasts that were prostrate on the ground swiftly opened a path so that it could pass. It walked to the innermost circle and faced the Snow Empress before it lay prostrate as well. Its action was just like the tiny bear that Huo Yuhao had seen before. Its giant buttocks were raised high into the air, and its upper body was flat on the ground. Its large head swayed faintly as it whimpered softly at the Snow Empress. That sound made it seem like the bear had just met its owner, and it was filled with admiration. The Snow Empress smiled faintly when she saw the bear, and she waved at him gently. The soul beasts prostrate on the extreme north immediately stared at the ice bear, and their eyes were filled with envy. The gigantic bear was overjoyed as it stood up and howled elatedly into the air before it ran towards the Snow Empress. The bear was far too big, and its run was like a tiny mountain jumping up and down in the icy plains of the extreme north. Its incredibly fat body would leave deep marks in ground every time it landed. 1,000 meters was but a blink of an eye for this bear. It suddenly slowed down only when it was 50 meters away from the Snow Empress, and it actually crawled the last 50 meters, until it was right in front of her. Its head was over 2 meters in diameter, but it still shoved its face before the Snow Empress. His large nose, which was different from its white fur, and was a little pinkish, poked forward. Huo Yuhao almost felt as if this fellow's breathing could create hurricanes. He didn't need to use spiritual detection for him to judge clearly that this bear was a 100,000-year soul beast. Even though its strength couldn't compare to the great Star Do Forest's bear lord, Huo Yuhao figured that this bear couldn't be that much weaker. However, it was extremely respectful towards the Snow Empress. This bear was much more respectful than the bear lord was toward the beast god. The Snow Empress smiled, and her smile was like a flower that bloomed everywhere across the icy plains. The soul beasts, who didn't dare to even breathe heavily, all exhaled in relief, because they could feel the Snow Empress' happiness at the same time. The Snow Empress raised her hand and placed it gently on the bear's enormous nose. She stroked it tenderly and said softly, "You've grown fat again, little bai. Little bai. This fellow is little." The corner of Huo Yuhao's mouth twitched. Is he the Snow Empress' pet? The Ice Empress' voice rang out next to Huo Yuhao's ear. The Snow Empress found Little Bai as a tiny ice bear when she first called herself queen, and he has been living with the Snow Empress ever since. It has been at least 200,000 years. Little Bai rules over his own domain now, but has always treated the Snow Empress like a mother. That's the reason why I didn't let you harm his descendants. More than 200,000 years of cultivation. This meant the enormous ice bear in front of Huo Yuhao could be considered a savage beast. The Ice Empress lowered her voice and said, "Little Bai's strength is comparable to that of the Titan Snow Devil King, but the Snow Empress asked him not to fight the Snow Devil King. Furthermore, he doesn't want to share the same status as the Snow Empress, and that's the reason why the outer world only knows about 3 of us, the extreme north's 3 heavenly kings." Millimeter. Huo Yuhao nodded softly. He was full of complicated emotions. The Snow Empress' rising power was a good thing for him, but he felt as if she was getting further and further away from him. It seemed like the Snow Lady was never coming back. Little Bai seemed very blissful as the Snow Empress continued to caress him. He whimpered from time to time, and his enormous white buttocks would twitch again and again in bliss. Right at this moment, the circle of soul beasts that was several hundred meters thick separated once more as a gigantic figure appeared in Huo Yuhao's vision. There was a whole patch of other enormous shadows that appeared along with the first one. The soul beasts that had formed a circle swiftly separated and opened a path for them. The enormous figure that was at the forefront strode into the inner circle. This figure looked a lot larger than the Ice Bear King, Little Bai. That was because this soul beast was just too tall. This soul beast was at least 120 meters tall. This was the largest species of soul beast that Huo Yuhao had ever seen. Even the beast god wasn't that tall if he was prostrate. Furthermore, the beast god always showed himself in human form. What was even stranger was that this enormous, terrifying soul beast had a build that was very similar to that of humans. It had long and slender arms, and snowy white fur covered its entire body. Even its face had similar features to that of humans, except there were many wrinkles on its forehead, and its skin had a copper tint. It had 2 large fangs, and those 2 fangs showed its true colors as a soul beast. Huo Yuhao didn't need the Ice Empress to explain for him to guess this species of soul beast, the Titan Snow Devils, that the Ice Empress had just mentioned. Only the Titan Snow Devils could have such enormous sizes. More importantly, the Titan Snow Devils were a community. There were more than 100 Titan Snow Devils behind this one. Even though they were not as tall as the first one, their average height was more than 80 meters. More than 10 of those who were exceptionally powerful were at least 100 meters tall, and their muscular frames seemed like they could hold up the skies. The other soul beasts that resided in the icy plains clearly created an even larger path when the snow devils came, and nobody dared to block their path. Snow Empress. The Titan Snow Devil King didn't continue forward once he entered the innermost circle. Instead, he knelt down onto the ground on a single knee and called out respectfully. He was speaking the human language, and he was the only soul beast that dared to actively address the Snow Empress directly amongst all the other soul beasts. He greeted the Snow Empress while he glanced at the Ice Bear King, who was lying down next to her, and the envy in his eyes was evident. The Snow Empress nodded at the Titan Snow Devil King and said, "Tai, it's been a long time." The Titan Snow Devil King hurriedly answered respectfully, "Yes. It's been long time, Snow Empress." "Ah? You're the Ice Empress." His eyes quickly landed on the Ice Empress, who wasn't far behind the Snow Empress. The Ice Empress didn't hide her own aura, so she could be easily recognized. The Ice Empress nodded at the Titan Snow Devil King, but said nothing. The Snow Empress was there, so this wasn't the time for her to speak. The Snow Empress' authority and majesty in the extreme north was something that no soul beast would dare to violate. The Snow Empress said plainly, Tai, you can get up." "All right." The Titan Snow Devil King acknowledged as he hurriedly got to his feet. The group of Titan Snow Devils behind him had already gotten down on their knees like dominoes long ago, and they all appeared as reverent as could be. The scene was just too mind-blowing. The Titan Snow Devil's tremendous size was absolutely unrivaled amongst ground-walking soul beasts. So many Titan Snow Devils kneeling was just too spectacular. The Snow Empress waved at the Titan Snow Devil and said, "Come, sit down beside me." All right." The Titan Snow Devil King immediately ran over joyously to the Snow Empress side. The disturbance he created was comparable to the Ice Bear King as he jogged over. Huo Yuhao witnessed a very amusing detail in this moment. The Ice Bear King was still enjoying the Snow Empress caresses, but his eyes were closed into slits as he side-eyed the Titan Snow Devil King. The small part of his pupils clearly exuded disdain. It was evident that his relationship with the Titan Snow Devil King wasn't very amicable. Dong, the Snow Devil King trod over to the Snow Empress and sat down with his legs crossed next to the bear. The Ice Bear King and the Snow Devil King were just too immense, and Huo Yuhao immediately felt as if another mountain appeared in front of him. The Snow Devil King didn't dare to mess around in front of the Snow Empress. However, he clearly touched the Ice Bear King's body when he sat down, and those two fellows shoved each other forcefully, but nobody got the better of each other. However, a series of cracking sounds could be heard on the tough ice beneath them. Such terrifying fellows. Huo Yuhao had made some rough judgments about the soul beasts in the extreme north over this period of observation. He realized that the soul beasts on the icy plains were much more cohesive and united compared to the Great Star Doe Forest's soul beasts. Both the Ice Bear King and the Titan Snow Devil King were at the apex of the food chain in this place, but they still didn't dare to mess around in front of the Snow Empress at all. They submitted completely to the Snow Empress, and the other soul beasts did the same. The Snow Empress was a dictator, in the truest meaning of the word. The extreme north's overall strength perhaps wasn't sufficient to fight against the Great Star Doe Forest, but that would only be the case if the battle happened in that region. If this battle happened in the extreme north, then Huo Yuhao was inclined to believe that the extreme north's soul beasts were more likely to emerge victorious. After all, the environment in this place was far too vile for typical soul beasts. The Snow Empress said plainly, "All right, since almost everyone is here, we can begin. I haven't seen everyone in such a long time, and I am very happy to be back." Even though there wasn't a single hint of a smile on her face, the thousands of soul beasts immediately cried out in joy once she said those words. Deafening roars and sound waves forcefully tore the hurricanes apart across the icy plains. Every single soul beast grew excited, as if they were overcome with mass bloodlust. The Snow Empress gradually raised her right hand and pressed it against the air. The ear-splitting howls of thousands and thousands of soul beasts immediately stopped, and everything returned to silence. The Snow Empress eyed the Tai-Tan Snow Devil King beside her. The Snow Devil King could feel her gaze, and immediately lowered his head to curry favor with her. The Snow Empress said, "I have been in closed-door cultivation over these few years, and I have been working hard to break through the next bottleneck. Every one of you knows that I'm not young anymore, and I have been alive for far too long. Di Qian, the evil eye, and I have reached the end. The world of the future belongs to you. The extreme north is a paradise. The thing that has made me most content is peace in the extreme north. I have gathered everyone here for two important matters. First, I'm here to announce to everyone that I will be going into another episode of closed-door cultivation, after meeting everyone here today, and I don't know how that will turn out. I am here to bid everyone farewell. It's very likely that this is the last time we will meet. Secondly, I'm here to appoint my successor." The Snow Empress words caused an uproar across the extreme north's soul beasts. The Snow Empress was the extreme north's divine guardian. The Snow Empress said that she could be leaving this world soon, and she wanted to attempt a very tough breakthrough. That was just unbelievable, and this was like a calamity for them. Forceful roars and howls could be heard as the Tai-Tan Snow Devil King suddenly got to his feet. He hammered his broad chest heavily, and his furious howls crackled so explosively that they suppressed the uproar from all the other soul beasts. A formidable aura mixed with boundless murderousness permeated the skies, as the soul beasts, who were just making a racket, lowered their heads frightfully. However, that didn't cause their emotions to settle. The Snow Empress was God in the extreme north. Could the extreme north still be the same place without their god? The Tai-Tan Snow Devil King surveyed everyone coldly before he sat down beside the Snow Empress once more. The Snow Empress said plainly, "I declare that our Tai will succeed me from this moment onwards. He will become ruler of the extreme north, and you have to respect him like you respect me and listen to his orders, and you have to support him to maintain peace in the extreme north. Our Tai is a little rough and crude, but he is honest and sincere, and he is very honorable. He doesn't rely on his strength to overpower other species, and he is the most suitable candidate." The extreme north's soul beasts were astonished once more once that was said. From the soul beast's perspective, only the Ice Empress could succeed the Snow Empress position. Furthermore, all the soul beasts in the extreme north knew that the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress were practically conjoined, and they shared a great relationship. Of the three heavenly kings, the first two heavenly kings could even match the beast god's prowess if they teamed up. If the battle was to occur here, the beast god would have to avoid them. The Snow Empress relinquishing her position as ruler over the extreme north was enough to shock them. The fact that she wanted to pass her position to the Tai-Tan Snow Devil King instead of the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion was even more unbelievable for them. Even the Tai-Tan Snow Devil King himself widened his eyes and stared at the Snow Empress. He thought that she had made a mistake. The Snow Empress gazed back at the Snow Devil King and nodded in his direction to show him that her words rang true. "Snow Empress, the Snow Devil King's voice was clearly a little shaky. However, he wasn't shaky from excitement, but from grief. Only savage beasts knew what the Snow Empress arrangement meant. Her decision meant she wasn't confident of breaking through her next bottleneck, and that the Ice Empress was facing a similar situation. Otherwise, with the relationship between the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress, the Snow Empress would never pass her position to him." A faint smile appeared on the Snow Empress' face as she said, "Our Tai, you have accumulated much credit over these years, and you have truly grown up. I have been watching your every move from day to day, and I am very happy that you have been doing well over the years. This position has always been more suitable for you than the Ice Empress. Her personality is too strong, and her tribe isn't as dominant as the Tai-Tan Snow Devils. Therefore, I have always thought of you as my successor in my heart. You have to remember that even if I'm not around, the extreme north will still be the same. You have to be kind to every species, and you have to uphold my vision, that the extreme north has to be sufficiently united so that we will not be bullied and invaded by external enemies." Yes, large teardrops slipped from the Snow Devil King's eyes. The Snow Empress' instructions to him was something he had never expected. The Snow Empress passed her position to him, and that was sufficient to show her trust. He had always been delightfully willing under the Snow Empress' command. He couldn't help but feel sorrowful when he thought that the Snow Empress could reach the end of her life. The Ice Bear King, who was prostrate beside the Snow Empress, finally reopened his eyes and stared at the Titan Snow Devil King. There was a little bit of unwillingness in his eyes, and he didn't mask his emotions. However, the Snow Devil King's attention wasn't on the Ice Bear King in this moment. The Snow Empress said plainly, "Ah Tai, and my other children. You must remember that my departure doesn't mean that I'm dead. If my attempt is unsuccessful, then there's nothing else to be said, but if I'm successful, then even Di Tian will never surpass me. My soul will always be in the extreme north whether or not I am successful, and I will always protect you. Anybody who violates the extreme north's rules is my enemy." Roar, roar, roar. 3 continuous roars erupted from the mass of soul beasts. All the soul beasts in the extreme north howled hysterically as they released the emotions in their hearts. The Titan Snow Devil King stood up once more and took a few steps back before he kneeled on both knees in front of the Snow Empress. He kowtowed, and his immense frame trembled continuously from the beginning to the end. Every single kowtow looked very sincere. The Snow Empress grinned as she nodded at the Snow Devil King. "You can stand up, Ah Tai. There's something I need you to do before I leave." The Snow Devil King immediately raised his head and said reverently, "No matter when, only you control the extreme north, Snow Empress. Only you are ruler of the extreme north, and I trust that you will be back. I will guard this place for you when you're not around. I will await your return." The Titan Snow Devil King sobbed uncontrollably. The Snow Empress' expression changed as she witnessed his emotions. "All right. If I am successful, I will definitely return to visit. Perhaps that won't take too long." She turned around as she said that and glanced at Huo Yuhao, and her warm gaze stunned him momentarily. "All right, I have said all that needs to be said. Everyone can go. You can return and continue your lives. Any important matters in the icy plains in the future will be decided by our Tai." The Snow Empress floated into the air as she spoke, and she glided continuously and levitated silently high in the sky. The Snow Devil King hurriedly took a few steps forward and stood beneath her. The Snow Empress drifted down and landed on his broad shoulder. There were so many soul beasts in the icy plains, but not a single one moved. They just lay there, prostrate, and knelt and kowtowed at the Snow Empress. The Snow Empress stood on the Snow Devil King's shoulders and gradually turned around. Her eyes were covered with mist as she stared at her kinsman, who had followed her for so many years. "Go, my children. Let me watch you leave." The Snow Empress' voice traveled far into the distance. The soul beasts on the icy plains got up one after another as they listened to her orders, and they gradually dispersed. However, they would turn back after a few steps as they departed, and they stared at the old ruler of the extreme north with reluctant eyes. From this moment on, the 3 heavenly kings were no more, and all that was left was their new ruler. The Snow Empress just stood there quietly, and the Titan Snow Devil King was also motionless. The Ice Bear King stood up at the same time, and he was over 40 meters tall as he stood up straight. He was still much shorter than the Snow Devil King, but his muscularity was quite comparable. The Ice Bear King's silver fur flickered continuously, and fierce lights flashed in his eyes. He glanced at the Snow Devil King from time to time, and then at the soul beasts that were leaving in the distance. His emotions were clearly rippling. Huo Yuhao stood with the Ice Empress from the beginning to the end as he witnessed this succession of authority in the extreme north. He couldn't help but sigh with admiration at the Snow Empress. "Snow Empress, you are third of the 10 great savage beasts after all." A whole hour passed before all the soul beasts gradually departed, and the extreme north returned to tranquility. Only 2 tribes remained, the Ice Bears and the Titan Snow Devil King. These 2 great tribes were some of the strongest ones across the extreme north. They were known as the 3 great tribes along with the Ice Jade Scorpions, and their overall strengths were most formidable. The Snow Empress' eyes were full of lament as she stood on the Snow Devil King's shoulder. After all, she had ruled over the extreme north for hundreds of thousands of years, and she still couldn't bear to leave this place forever. She had racked her brains back then so that she could recultivate and preserve her strength as much as possible, but she was taken away by a soul master who had ventured into the extreme north. That was the reason why everything that had happened afterwards happened, and she didn't have time to address anything to anybody back then. She managed to deal with her affairs in this moment, but she was still very reluctant in her heart. Snow Empress. A deep and hoarse voice rang out that shook the Snow Empress awake from her thoughts. The Snow Empress looked down from the Snow Devil King's shoulders. She saw the Ice Bear King looking up at her, and he was staring at her with very sincere eyes. The Snow Empress tapped her foot on the Snow Devil King's shoulders and descended from the sky as she drifted to the ground. The Ice Bear King immediately lay down once more and pressed his enormous head against the ground. There was some pitifulness in his eyes, and there was also some exasperation as he stared at the Snow Empress. Snow Empress. He called out once more. The Snow Empress ignored him. Instead, she turned towards the Snow Devil King and said, "Tai, you have just succeeded me as ruler of the extreme north. You have to personally placate the large tribes beneath you, and you have to establish authority and credit as quickly as possible. Go, I will wait 3 days for you here, and after 3 days, you shall bring your kinsman. There is something that I need you to do." "Yes, Snow Empress." The Titan Snow Devil King glanced at the Ice Bear King, and a thread of worry flashed across his eyes. However, he still followed the Snow Empress' instructions as he turned and left. The Snow Empress watched the Snow Devil King depart, before she turned towards the Ice Bear King. "Snow Empress, what about me? What's going to happen to me?" The Ice Bear King only voiced his doubts in this moment. His kinsmen were quietly waiting in the distance, and even the Titan Snow Devils had departed along with the Snow Devil King. The Snow Empress said plainly, "As for you, of course I have my own arrangements. You shall just follow me, little by." The Ice Bear King was momentarily stunned. "Follow you? Aren't you going into closed-door cultivation?" The Snow Empress continued, "I will not be here in the extreme north anymore. Only your tribe is worthy of challenging our Tai. Even though our Tai's tribe is stronger overall, you might still have a chance of victory. Will you listen to him when I'm no longer around?" The Ice Bear King immediately went silent after hearing the Snow Empress question. He couldn't lie in front of the Snow Empress, so he could only respond with silence. The Snow Empress continued, "Therefore, only one of you may exist on the extreme north after my departure. Otherwise, peace in the extreme north will be very difficult to maintain." Snow Empress. The Ice Bear King cried out dejectedly. "All right, Snow Empress, I'll listen to you. You have bestowed life upon me, and you raised me so that I could become stronger, and you helped me become king of the extreme northern bears. You have given me everything I have, and your wish is my command. I will die if that's what you want." The Snow Empress laughed. "Silly, why would I want you to kill yourself? I chose our Tai to become ruler of the extreme north after considering between you and him, and that's because his personality, and the entire Titan Snow Devil tribe, is more suitable than you and your tribe. However, he can never compare to you in terms of intimacy. You are like the Ice Empress in my heart, and you are my family. Ice is my sister, but you are my child." This video will end here.